All right, the word has come out on Matt Flynn. Hold it together, buddy. Hold it together. Matt Flynn has not wowed anybody, according to John Clayton. Now, we knew that Tavares Jackson would probably get the first reps, the first team reps starting training camp. It'd be one day him, one day Matt Flynn. Pete had talked about that a while back, but John Clayton, talking the other day, says he hasn't wowed anybody in all the offseason program. It's still going to be a three-way competition. Because of that, Flynn's going to have to pick things up and wow everybody, or at least take control of it during camp. He has not done it yet. Does that worry you? I hate hearing that, because I still believe, despite what John Clayton has said, that Matt Flynn will be the starter. But you'd like to hear something like, yeah, he's looked pretty good, but Tavares knows the offense better or whatever. But to hear, well, he better pick it up. That's really not what you want to hear with your big offseason acquisition.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I think he will be the number one guy coming out of training camp into the regular season. I think it's important to define kind of what we're talking about. We're not talking about Matt Flynn not performing. We're not talking about him performing poorly. We're talking about the fact that he hasn't wowed anyone with what I imagine would be those deep strikes down the sidelines to Sidney Rice, who's wide open 40 yards down the field. And by all accounts, everything that we heard about Matt Flynn in a couple of OTAs and one minicamp was that he made all the necessary throws. He checked down when he needed to. He was able to weave some balls into some tight coverage when he needed to, and didn't really make any mistakes. And that's kind of what we heard about Tavares Jackson in one of the OTAs that Brock wrote about on 710sports.com, that same old Tavares. So are we talking about the fact that he's not wowing everyone with these highlight reel plays? Or are we talking about the fact that he's done everything that he's needed to do and hasn't been flashy in doing it? And if that's the case, which I think it is, I'm not concerned at the least at this point about Matt Flynn.
I think he's kind of unassuming. I think he's just kind of one of those guys who physically doesn't wow you. He's not 6'5". He's just a shade over 6'2", I think. He's not a big build guy. He's not a guy who's going to run a 4.3, 4.4, so he doesn't wow you with blazing speed. He doesn't have the cannon arm. But he's just kind of one of those guys that seems to just kind of get it done. He's just he's efficient. He's efficient. He's a guy that could be compared to a Steve Young or something without the mobility, who's just going to sit there and maybe nickel and dime guys to death and can throw the deep ball, but maybe it's not going to have a ton of zip. He'll loft it up there like we saw him do against the Detroit Lions when he was with the Packers. So I think he's just one of those guys who doesn't come out and set the world on fire with arm strength or speed, but just is accurate, and that's what we've heard about him. So I lean more toward that, but we're relying on the people that have been out there watching them. We're always in the little closet out there and at VMAC when they're practicing, so we're relying on everybody else's highs. But despite all this, I still believe he's going to be the starter. I don't care what is being said, unless he falls flat on his face. I think he's a starter.
I think he will be too. And the other thing with him is that he can put together a tremendous 2-minute drill type drive late in the game in the fourth quarter, which was Tavares' ultimate downfall last year. I think was the inability to succeed late in games in the fourth quarter. And a lot of times those they aren't very flashy, and there's not a lot of sizzle to them, because it is a lot of those check down throws. It's move the chains, get out of bounds, and just do what it takes. May not be flashy, but I mean, boy, it gets the job done, and that's all that matters.
I'll take efficient over flashy anytime.